Salut à toutes et à tous, c'est Krayn. On attaque cette nouvelle semaine avec un titre très particulier. Un autre ovni du jeu vidéo, un jeu que j'ai beaucoup apprécié, qui devrait pas vous laisser indifférent normalement, c'est The Stanley Parable. The Stanley Parable à la base c'est un mode qui était sorti pour Half-Life 2 en 2011, développé par un gars tout seul, c'était un mode gratuit. En 2013 ils en ont fait un remake HD en montant un petit studio, Galactic Cafe, avec plus de contenu. Et c'est un jeu avec un gameplay quasi inexistant. Tout ce que vous allez pouvoir faire, c'est avancer, reculer, gauche-droite, vous baisser et interagir, sans icône pour interagir, donc vous ne savez pas réellement où vous cliquez. Il faut le voir un petit peu comme une aventure à choix multiples. Vous allez vous balader, un narrateur va vous parler, va raconter ce que vous faites, vous pouvez l'écouter, vous pouvez aller à son encontre et vous verrez que les dialogues sont vraiment, ce sont des perles. C'est vraiment un jeu qui est unique par son ambiance. Mais bon, je vais vous le montrer plutôt que de vous en parler. Je vais vous montrer un des chemins possibles. Il y en a de nombreux qui vous raconteront des histoires très différentes. Pour ce faire, je vais disparaître et faire l'expérience au casque parce que c'est encore plus agréable. Allez-y, c'est parti. Hop, disparition.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard. Orders came to him through a monitor on his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day, of every month, of every year. And although others might have considered it soul-rending, Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy. And then one day, something very peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget. He had been at his desk for nearly an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived on the monitor for him to follow. No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting, or even say hi. Never in all his years at the company had this happened, this complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and stepped out of his office.
Et donc voilà, on a le contrôle de Stanley. Stanley, un employé modèle qui fait son travail tous les jours, qui semble être heureux comme ça. Mais aujourd'hui, rien ne s'est passé. Tous les collègues semblent avoir disparu.
What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Donc là, le narrateur nous dit qu'on a décidé d'aller dans la meeting room.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Là, par exemple, vous apercevez un premier choix qui vous est offert. Le narrateur a dit qu'on a décidé d'aller à gauche. Mais qu'est-ce qui se passe si on décide d'aller à droite? Eh bien, vous ne le saurez pas, car je vais aller à gauche. On avance. Et on arrive dans la salle de réunion.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
Donc je conseille vraiment à ceux qui feront le jeu de lire un petit peu tout ce qu'il y a de marqué un peu partout, sur les tableaux, sur les slides, sur voilà, tout ce qu'il y a autour. Il y a vraiment beaucoup d'informations intéressantes, souvent beaucoup d'humour critique, d'humour cynique. On va avancer. Vous voyez, donc pour l'instant j'avance, je continue. Il m'a dit que j'ai décidé d'aller vers le bureau de mon patron. Mais là par exemple, vous voyez une petite pièce. Je peux l'ouvrir et je pourrais décider d'aller dedans par exemple. Mais je ne vais pas le faire. Mais par contre, j'invite les personnes qui jouent à potentiellement y aller.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Donc voilà, je peux décider de monter vers le bureau de mon patron, mais cette fois-ci, on va pas l'écouter. On a changé d'avis, on veut aller en bas.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all? None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down? Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. "I'm dreaming!" he yelled. "This is all a dream." Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground. Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too appeared. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought. And while he thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself, believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment, and my wife, and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay.
Et non, ce n'était pas un rêve.
Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black. This is the story of a woman named Mariella. Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy, this much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day. The very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
Et voilà. Nous revoici donc au tout début avec Stanley. Et en fait, vous allez explorer un petit peu tous les choix possibles. Qu'est-ce qui serait passé si vous avez pris le chemin de droite? Qu'est-ce qui serait passé si vous étiez montré voir votre boss? Qu'est-ce qui serait passé si vous étiez rentré dans telle ou telle pièce? Donc c'est un jeu qui est véritablement captivant. Vous avez pu le voir au niveau des dialogues, il y a vraiment des petites réflexions qui sont derrière, sur la folie, sur ce qu'on appelle la normalité, sur le fait de se convaincre d'être heureux ou non. Il y a vraiment beaucoup de choses, beaucoup d'embranchements. Là, vous n'avez quasiment rien vu du jeu. C'est un chemin assez court, d'autres chemins sont beaucoup plus longs, d'autres chemins seront beaucoup plus difficiles à découvrir, mais c'est unique. C'est vraiment une expérience à faire et c'est le genre de jeu vidéo qui nous rassure tellement sur les possibilités qu'il y a avec ce médium. Voilà, pour moi c'est un jeu incroyable. C'est véritablement un très gros coup de cœur. Un jeu que je conseille de faire une fois dans sa vie. Hop, je peux même réapparaître pour la fin et enlever ce casque. Parce que vraiment faire le jeu au casque, entendre la voix du narrateur, c'est encore plus agréable. Donc n'hésitez pas à me dire ce que vous en avez pensé. Si vous y avez joué, si c'est quelque chose qui vous a vous aussi autant marqué que moi. Voilà, donc je vous laisserai découvrir par la suite. C'est vrai qu'on dit souvent pour The Stanley Parable, moins on en sait, mieux c'est. Donc là je vous ai montré un chemin, mais je peux vous assurer qu'il y a énormément de choses encore à découvrir. Bon allez zou, je vous fais des bisous et je vous dis à très bientôt. Ah, il y a le narrateur qui parle, du coup je vais vous laisser lire.
He likes to see how long he can go without dying. So far he's doing excellent, and if he just stays right where he is, I'm sure he'll keep up that good momentum. Let's observe the genius at work.
Par exemple là, vous venez d'apprendre que l'inaction potentiellement peut engendrer aussi une réaction du narrateur et qui sait, peut-être quelque chose dans l'histoire. Allez zou, je disparais avant qu'il continue de parler, je vous fais des bisous et je vous dis à très bientôt. Ciao ciao tout le monde.